Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thursdays with Cassidy. This is the place on Thursdays at the Ask Dr. Callahan Facebook page where we come and answer questions from you guys. This week, I want to talk to you about mistakes. The biggest issue that we face in math class is people get very distressed about mistakes, but please remember, the number one rule in math class is that mistakes mean that you're learning. After all, if you're getting everything right all the time, you're in the wrong class, because if you know it all already, then there's nothing for you to learn. And so mistakes are really a good indicator of growth. But how do you identify mistakes, and what do you do with them once you know that they're there? And that's what we're going to talk about today. What I want to encourage you to do is, as a teacher, instead of showing your students their mistakes, I want you to encourage them to find their own mistakes. When they get in there and they're working through the problems, not only is this going to encourage independence, but it's also going to teach them how to think through their work. They're the ones that sat there with the page and thought through their own thought process to arrive at the answer they put on the page. So when they get something wrong or they work the process wrong, having them think through it again in terms of how they did their work reinforces their thought process and helps them understand what they're doing. And then there are 3 key steps to this process of letting your students find their own mistakes. And I'm going to walk through them with you. It's Thursday afternoon and my speech isn't cooperating with me here today. But there's 3 steps and I'm going to show them to you. Let's start with the first one. The first step is have them review their own work. And I use the phrase review their own work intentionally because a lot of times you would call this step grading their own work. But for students who are not working for a letter grade, but instead are working towards getting the problem correct and understanding what they're doing, you may not necessarily be going for points here. And certainly in this first step, it's not about having the student give themselves a grade. They're not going through taking off points here and adding points there and coming up with an A-. That's not what I mean. What I mean is they want to look through their problem and ask the question, does your work on this problem demonstrate that you understand how to do this step? And does your work show that you understand how to do this step? And they answer that question with a yes or a no. A yes, obviously, for a student that's counting numerical points, the yes would mean you get full points for the problem, and the no means that you don't get points. When you don't get points for the problem, then you go on to step 2, which is identify what didn't work and identify what should have worked properly. You want to look at the problem and ask the question, why didn't this work? Obviously, they sat down, they tried some math, maybe they multiplied when they should have divided, maybe they applied the Pythagorean theorem when they needed to use distributive property. You know, it could be a lot of things, but most likely they applied a valid math approach, but it didn't work in this context. And so they really want to look at, well, why didn't it work? What did I try? And what did I overlook that would have shown me what to do to get it correct? And they can use their textbook or contact our support line, ask you guys as their parents, or even, research it and look it up on Google, whatever it takes to understand. But you want to take this time to find out what happened. And then once they figure out what they've done, they're going to pay more attention to their work. It helps them better understand what they're doing. And it's just like the best way to learn how to ride a bike. When you get on it and you fall off, the best thing to do is to get back on and do it correctly. That's kind of what you're doing with math problems. When you work it the first time and you don't get it right, it's not enough to just mark it off and keep going and hope that somewhere down the line you're going to work another problem to get it correct. When you miss one, you have to stop and pay attention to it, which brings us to step 3, which is you want to rework it correctly. And what that means is you want to have the student try the missed problem again. And this is one of the reasons that we don't recommend completing every single problem that's available to you in a math textbook, because instead of working 100 problems halfway, getting some of them right and others of them wrong, and hoping that enough of them were right that you understand it enough to move on, it creates this system where you have basically a huge question mark over whether or not you really understand what you're doing. It's a better approach to take a handful of key problems and work through them until you can get those right. Then if you want to practice similar problems from the rest of the homework to get the extra experience with the concept, that's fine to do that as well. But when you work a problem and you miss it, it's important to go back and rework it to get it correct, applying what you identified was the original problem in order to understand the concept you're trying to master in that particular lesson. This 3-step process is outlined for you in our teacher's guides of the courses that we teach, but it's the method for approaching homework and tests that we teach. And the reason we do that is it helps students discover for themselves how to find their mistakes, identify what was wrong, and then rework it. Not only to teach them the math concepts they're trying to learn in a way that lets you as their teacher feel confident that yes, they know this lesson, but it also encourages self-directed learning. We're all the time trying to prepare our kids for life after high school. As adults, we want them to be people who can solve problems, who don't have to have someone point their mistakes out to them to be able to fix them. And that is kind of a life skill that this approach also teaches. It helps them develop the ability to solve problems independently. So I hope that helps you as you're approaching your homework. The good news is it takes some work off mom because now the student can grade their own homework and tests, but of course it also gives them some really strong skills that will be useful to them, definitely in high school math as they move forward, but also life after high school. If you have any questions about this concept, please let us know. I think it's down right there. You can post comments for us and let us know what you think about this idea. How have you applied this at home? Do your students enjoy reworking their own work? And how is that working for you? Let us know, and I'll see you guys next Thursday. Bye-bye.